and welcome to my channel where I make dishes inspired by some of my favorite video game characters. Today's dish is inspired by Clive from Final Fantasy XVI. If you've played Final Fantasy XVI, then you know how great of a character he is. He might have a rough and tough exterior, but deep down, he is a kind man who cares so much about everyone around him. I think of Ben Starr, Clive's English voice actor, being interviewed and asked to describe Clive in one word, and he chose love. After all he has been through, he still has so much love in his heart, and we see through the game how much of a romantic he is in many different ways. For how selfless Clive is, when I think of a dish for him, I imagine him wanting to make something to share with people he loves, like Jill and Joshua. Since he is such a romantic, what is better than something fruity and chocolatey? I envision Clive making a decadent and rich dessert like chocolate raspberry brownies. I can see him baking these for Joshua when he was a child, and I can see him also baking and sharing with Jill in the candlelight under the moon. Sorry, Torgal, the only bummer is that he can't share chocolate with you, but he would totally drop you a couple raspberries. Here's the ingredients that you and Clive would need: light brown sugar, cocoa powder, all-purpose flour, melted unsalted butter, vanilla extract, 3 large eggs, semi-sweet or dark chocolate chips/chunks, fresh or frozen raspberries, and optional flaky sea salt for topping. The first step is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then grab an 8x8 inch pan and line it with parchment paper. It's alright if the parchment paper does not stay in the pan perfectly. Lightly grease the parchment paper, then set aside. Next, we'll start with mixing 3 of our ingredients in a large bowl. Start by melting your unsalted butter. You will need 3/4 cup of melted butter, which is 1.5 sticks of butter. Feel free to melt your butter in the microwave or on the stovetop. Once melted, we can begin mixing. Pour your melted butter in your large bowl, then add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 3/4 cup of cocoa powder. Just a warning, cocoa powder can get a bit messy. Whisk all 3 together until there are no large clumps left. Then set the bowl to the side. Grab a separate medium bowl and combine 3 eggs and 1 3/4 cup of packed light brown sugar. Whisk these 2 ingredients together until the mixture is well combined and becomes lighter and fluffier, like Torgal. Now it's time to combine everything into the larger bowl. One thing I didn't do here that would have helped is mixing the cocoa powder mix before combining the 2 bowls, as the cocoa powder mix may become slightly more set and harder to mix. So, give your cocoa powder bowl one more mix and then use a rubber spatula to fold the brown sugar mixture into the cocoa powder mixture. Not everything has to be fully mixed before we add in our next 2 ingredients, flour and sugar. Add in 3/4 cup of flour and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then continue to fold the batter until everything is smooth and there is no more flour visible. Try your best to get rid of any chunks of cocoa powder that you see. From here, we can add in our chocolate chips and raspberries. First, pour about a 1/2 cup of chocolate chips or chunks into the batter. Fold the batter once again until the chips are evenly distributed. Now, we don't have to be super careful mixing the chocolate in, but we do need to be a little more careful folding in the raspberries. If you're using frozen raspberries, there's not much to worry about, but if you chose fresh raspberries, you want to be careful that you don't mix so hard they burst. One way to protect the raspberries from breaking is to freeze them for a short period of time before you use them, so they are slightly more firm. Thanks to the dominant of ice for protecting not only the people, but the raspberries as well. Again, carefully fold your raspberries into the batter until they are evenly distributed in the batter. At this point, your batter is ready to go into the oven to be baked by the dominant of fire. Pour your brownie mix into your prepared baking pan and smooth the top of the brownies as best as you can before placing into the oven. While baking, this is the perfect time to pet and play with your own Torgal. For time, the brownies will bake for 30 to 50 minutes. I know that this is a very wide time window, but I wanted to leave some wiggle room for everyone's respective brownie tastes. I ended up cooking mine for about 45 minutes, but if you want the brownies to be more firm or more gooey, bake more or less respectively. In general with brownies, it's usually safer to take them out of the oven slightly earlier than slightly later. The brownies will continue to cook a little upon removing them from the oven, and they'll become more firm and set anyways once they are at room temperature. Generally, to know if your brownies are done, A knife or toothpick should come out with a small amount of brownie batter when inserted into the center. In my opinion, this can be the trickiest part of brownies, figuring out when they can be taken out. I'll admit that I had to put my brownies back in for a few minutes even after I thought they were done because they were still too gooey. Whoopsie. I just want to take this time to point out that cooking and baking is not always the most glamorous and camera friendly, and that is completely okay. Most people will usually still want to taste it. Regardless, use your baking time however you would like, and once you feel your brownies are ready, go ahead and remove them from the oven. You'll likely want to let your brownies cool for about 5 to 10 minutes before digging in. Feel free to top with flaky sea salt if you'd like while they are cooling. Once cooled, we are ready to try a bite. I always love the rich taste of a warm brownie. The gooey center next to the chewy edges is such a fun contrast. Each bite is so satisfying, and when you get a surprise bite of tangy raspberry, it is such a treat. To top it all off, they are so easy to make, and they are great to eat several days after baking, which is so convenient for Clive after a long day in battle. Just like how it is so easy to love Clive, it is so easy to love these brownies. It's easy to see that people grow closer and form bonds when fighting on the battlefield together, but a calm night sharing food can do the same thing. The recipe card is in the video description if you'd like a more quick and concise version to give it a try. Like if you want a bite, subscribe for more geeky treats, and comment what foods Clive reminds you of. Thanks for following along.